Babaji sometimes says the world is not real and that only the self is real. But in our day-to-day experience, we experience the world very much as though it is real. So what does Babaji mean by real in this sense?
At least first thing, everybody need to understand and remember the entire universe is impermanent. Nothing is permanent. It's not going to be there as it is always. Its shape changes. The time consumes a matter, whether it's human body or a mountain, earth or sun or anything like that. Well, to tell not real means there is another thing, a certain thing that which appears and disappears. How can it be real? It cannot be a real entity. So that which is unchangeable has never appeared, always been there, and is not going to disappear, is the one reality. That's what you would experience through the practice of meditation. Here again I have tried to tell elaborately, amongst the millions of thoughts that are in your mind. This is point to be noted. Thoughts themselves are not mind. Thoughts are in the mind. When thoughts are there, the same entity, we recognize it as mind. Mind is holding all those thoughts. So amongst them, one is the consciousness of existence. You always have the feeling that I exist. This is not a thought, this is a reality. So in meditation, slowly as you understand and adopt the technique, just watch. Means, in other words, you are ignoring every thought and vision. You are not trying to get involved with them. You don't analyze whether it is good or bad, right or not, whether it is divine figure or anything else. You just focus, use that vision to focus your mind's attention. Then slowly all thoughts and all visions in due course of time will disappear in different stages also. Then what remains is the consciousness of existence. That I exist. That's what different teachers have tried to use different terminologies. Like for example, Ramana Maharshi has used the terminology of you inquire yourself, self-inquiry, who am I? And then by closing the eyes, try to observe from where that I is coming. Then your mind gets absorbed there. It stops. All thoughts and visions disappear. Thus, as you achieve the silence of the mind, so then your attention gets absorbed into that I. That is where it stops. That is the self. Eventually you will realize. The same I have tried to use in a different terminology as consciousness of existence. As you go on watching, all thoughts, everything will disappear. And your consciousness gets to introverted. It turns to itself. It pays attention to itself. That's what the consciousness means, I have explained. Wherever you apply your consciousness, you become aware of that existence. So if it is onto its own imaginations, just now it is preoccupied with its own imagination. And these thoughts cannot be real because it appears and disappears. It is the mind which is creating these thoughts by the technique of imagination, mind's imagination. So thus, mind cannot give what is real ever. It gives only whatever it imagines. Like commonly we tell, a friend might appear as a foe might appear as a friend. Whatever the mind says, whatever the brain reflects, you believe that firmly. This is the truth. So that's what, that stubbornness is what is known as Rajasik Swabhava. So that is what is unreal, but yet it says. So thus mind cannot give any reality. So through the practice of meditation, when you achieve silence of mind, what remains is the pure consciousness. Here, Adi Shankara's words in Viveka Chudamani, like when you come face to face in your consciousness, what happens at that time when it is pure consciousness, your consciousness of existence is there. You will realize you are that. That conscious is nothing but you. Beyond the birth and death of the body, beyond the appearance of anything in the world and disappearance, that remains always intact. That's what the self or Atman, and in so many terminologies, different teachers have explained, whether it is nirvana, liberation, moksha, anything. So like that they have explained. This is what the reality is, because you cannot remove that, you cannot make it disappear. That's how the sages determine the self is immortal. It is eternal in existence. So that's how we get to the reality, and observing the unreality, we understand this cannot be the real.
Thank you, Babaji. It said, or I think you have said, the past no longer exists and the future does not yet exist. So does that mean only the present exists? And could we say that the present is therefore the reality?
Yes, the present, because you see, mind is either brooding about the past or is anxious about the future. They both are in imaginations only. Past will not come back under any circumstances. It's over. It's only in your memory. You try to remember, like your childhood or your youth and anybody connected to you, all these things. They are all there, the world, everything. The past will not come back. We also advise people, do not feel guilty or keep worrying about the past. It is not going to come back under any circumstances. Simply you can learn not to repeat such mistakes. If you had committed mistake, if the history anybody else had committed mistake, we learn lessons about the pros and cons of the actions and thus learn it. Future, you can always plan your future, but need not be anxious. It has not yet come to you, it is there. What the future is, nobody knows. That is the reality. The present is there. Your efforts in the present can shape a better future for you. So your focus, remaining focused in your present work is important. So this meditation helps you to neutralize your mind and brings you into the present. It is seldom into the present. The power is in the now. That's what is needed. So that's what the practice needs, and the present as the reality. So once this passes by, but the present also doesn't stop there all the time. The time keeps moving. So if we tell this present is the reality, that is also not reality. About this world I am talking, because that keeps moving. It doesn't stay into one pointed or as it is. Its shape changes. You saw your youth also, your childhood also, but that didn't stay. When that was present, that you were small boy, but that didn't stay, it passed by. Now the body has become old, like that. It will die also one day. Don't get panicked. That's the truth.
Thank you, Babaji. You've also said space cannot be just space. It's also supremely conscious. It must be the supreme being. So this is actually quite a hard concept for many people to come to terms with. They feel that if we're saying the space is the supreme being, the divine, then there's a lack of the glory of the divine in that.
This is because wrong notion about the divinity, and one who has not experienced this truth won't be able to make it, Because about space, everybody has learned, that has been fed into their brains and mind, that it's simply a void place. But need not be. It can be something else. At least you give benefit of doubt, 50-50, like that. Though this you will experience in deeper samadhi. Like in your meditation also, I have told, in between every thought, there is a gap. That gap is the space. And that space you will experience not simply a void place, but it is the pure consciousness of your existence. In meditation, within you, within the mind, when it is pure consciousness. So this is what you will experience. Now, other things, if you have read the scriptures, listen to lectures and talks and discourses and all such things, divine is supposed to be all pervaded. Right? If a certain thing is all pervaded, how can anything else other than that divine exist? So in this logic also, whatever is all pervaded now must be the divine, if that is the case. Right? We can experience this later in deeper samadhi when we practice, but now logically also if we think, if God has to be all pervaded everywhere, only such a thing can be the most powerful which exists all pervaded. If an object is occupying only a certain space, one place, it cannot be a supreme. Something bigger than that is always there in the creation, in the universe, in the Milky Way, in the galaxies. One is above the other, one is bigger than the other. An ant is big for itself, but for us the ant is just nothing. And we ourselves as the human is just like an ant sticking onto this earth planet. When you see the space magazine somewhere, in the space an arrow shows our solar system is somewhere here. We see this earth solar system such big for us, but when you compare it to the Milky Ways and galaxies, that is just nothing. Solar system is small microspeck somewhere there, it is there. Like that, everything becomes small against the other bigger one. One is bigger than the other. This always keeps on going. So you cannot decide which one is the supreme, which one is the final truth. So amongst the matter and space now, space is the only thing unchangeable, and nothing can be equivalent to space. Nothing can stand along with the space as much as the space is there. Space is boundless. Galaxies, space, it's never ending. And the entire matter, entire universe, entire created thing, that which has appeared, exists in the space. It cannot go out of space. You all agree? Impossible, right? Space is everywhere. Yet it cannot go out of space. So thus it is binded within the space. It has to be in the space. Some of the points. Another beautiful point, as in the Yoga Vasishtha teachings, it says, the divinity, it exists in itself. Now you all observe the space. Space is the only thing which has the quality, ability to exist in itself. It doesn't need anything else for its existence. Whereas the entire creation, created things, universe, Milky Way, galaxy, whatever you want to call terminology, they all have to exist in the space. They need space for their existence. Without space, they cannot exist. You remove the entire universe, you remove this earth, I will show the space is there always. But you try to remove the space and show me, nobody can do that. You cannot even touch the space. That's what in Bhagavad Gita it talks, fire cannot burn, the water cannot soak, and no weapon can slay. Putin can threaten Ukraine and the world, but he cannot threaten with nukes of the space. So these are all some of the truth that which says space is more supreme than the matter. It is a permanent entity. It doesn't disappear. It must have been all the time there. Like another example I tell, if you look at the room, you can call this room is filled with space, or you can call this room is void with space. The space appears depending on your attitude. Zero is absolute, absolute is zero. Zero is that which has no beginning and no end. For a while, whatever we have heard about zero appears to be just nothing, but that zero is everything actually. That is the absoluteness. The absolute is in the form of zero, which has no beginning, no center, no end. So based on this, some conclusions happen. Apart from this, it's an individual experience. One needs to go deeper into meditation, remain focused on the self, on the consciousness of existence. Then you will experience that space within and outer also is nothing but the supreme consciousness of existence. That is how the great sages of Rigvedic era decided that is divine in nature. It's a supreme consciousness of existence.
Thank you very much, Babaji. So, when a yogi experiences the supreme consciousness, the supreme existence, divine, is it still possible to worship and pray to that space, that supreme consciousness?
As long as he exists in the body, when he comes out of the samadhi, he is now totally aware of the truth. His mind has become totally quiet and merged with that self. So all the time he is into worship. That is the real aradhana, real worship I have told. When your mind becomes quiet, the more it becomes non-violent and quiet, that is the real worship of God. Not simply chanting of a mantra, not any exercise through your hand or through your body itself can be a worship. Your mind must be applied. I repeatedly told, like an idol of the divine or a Shivalingam, anything, or a photo. So if you want to worship, you may have your own type of ritual, you may have learned. So that is no problem. Any ritual is all right. You may pour a glass of water or you may pour a glass of milk. God has not demanded that I want only sweets and I cannot take savories. There is no such thing. It's all our made things. If we want to eat sweet, we make it a rule. God accepts only the sweets so that everybody may bring sweets only. That's human cleverness, cunningness, what you call it, selfishness, in other words. But the truth is different. Mind has to be applied. So when you are doing such an exercise, ritual, if your mind is there, that is the real worship I have told. Thus, a yogi, even without doing any rituals also, if he is quietly sitting also, he is into the worship of the divinity. His awareness is merged with the divine, he is aware of that truth. So that is what is needed. And if he is used since childhood to a particular type, he might engage in that also to inspire others. Whether he does it or not, it is all the same, his mind already is quiet.
Thank you. So you said in meditation there are gaps between thoughts. Those gaps, where there are no thoughts, that is the experience of space, and that's also the experience of the now, the true now.
Yes, it's also the consciousness of existence. If you keenly observe, as I told just now, your mind is preoccupied with its imagination. That's why it is unable to notice. But if slowly the thoughts all decrease, that gap increases. you get to experience only the space, that is the silence. But in that silence, your existence you will experience. That is what consciousness of existence I was explaining a while ago. Also, on the outside, extroverted, I have told, when a person enters a room, the space seldom attracts him. Pillar, people sitting, the photos, fans, all matter, everything attracts. That appears quite exciting. If a gold is there, it's more exciting. The space, because it doesn't know anything about the space. But for a yogi, space is the greatest wonder. So that's more attractive. For a real scientist, space is the greatest wonder, it attracts him. That's what Einstein realized and told. You have to cross, if you cross the time and space barrier here means don't identify this space is mine, that space is mine. It's simply all pervaded. It's beyond any terminology. Space word is used only for sake of understanding, like any matter that can pass through its surface is the space. Also, first time when we went to school in our nursery times, first definition we heard about the space is that the void place in between these two walls is known as space. As we grew up, came to high school, college, university, everything, we understood the same space exists everywhere. So that is the real knowledge. And if I tell the space exists only in the classroom of my birthplace, everybody will laugh. In the same way, idol worship or any such symbolized worships that is done, it's only symbolic. That itself is not God, that itself is not the divine all-pervaded. That thing that which is all-pervaded, because mind is used to sound and sight. So, some teachers have evolved this Bhakti Marga other than idol worship, or you worship a book, or you worship any such symbolically. So that's what it is. But eventually you have to realize the same divinity is everywhere. If you meditate along with that worship, then you will realize, you get to experience that.
Thank you. Earlier you said that during tapas, the imagination goes, but it disappears in stages. So is there sort of different levels of reality or different levels of imagination, like a dream compared to the world, compared to space?
Reality is one, and it is not in different levels. Only the unreal appearance, matter, is in different levels. In the same way, that only I have tried to explain. The first stage, your mind has the ability to imagine, to be creative. That itself is a great thing. That's not an ordinary quality. Based on this imagination, person becomes creative. The entire universe is run with the matter in this world, in creativity. The second stage, I have tried to call it as mental projection. When your mind becomes more concentrated with the same idea. Suppose you fall in love with the picture of Babaji or any deity or anything, and you become obsessed with that picture. So your mind revolves, spins around, and it keeps remembering. The more you tries to remember, that appears more and more solid. So when this sits so solidly in your mind, to remove that, you need to do tapas, because you have to burn that. Otherwise, the mind will not give up so easily. Simply by listening to lectures, by teachings, or by reading, all these things are very helpful to motivate yourself to feel inspired. But finally, you have to practice. A technical practice is needed, where your mind does not recognize those thoughts anymore and just ignores by watching. So it doesn't get into a chatterbox. That's what has to happen. That's what the great sages observed. Otherwise the mind is instantly gets involved. It has this tendency, whatever it comes across, it recognizes that existence and analyzes like this is the computer, this is the laptop, I need this, this is mine, I am not going to allow anybody to take this away like this. It gets involved in the millions of thoughts of that. So that what is needs to be removed to realize the reality within you, that's the deeper one. For this world, all these are needed. Imagination means you don't have to imagine that you will lose the quality to imagine at all. It will not happen like that. The consciousness will always have the power to create, to be imaginative. That is remain. Simply you are taking control of yourself. So that when you want to imagine, you can imagine. When you don't want to imagine, you should be able to keep quiet. Only then you have peace. Otherwise the mind keeps going into cravings. It won't allow you to keep quiet. So that means it won't allow you to have your peace. That becomes a constant craving, which is the basic reason for all unhappiness. So that's what you need to avoid. You should be able to stop when you need to stop. You should be able to imagine when you need to imagine. Now as I was explaining different stages, the second stage is the mental projection. When your mind becomes more concentrated, obsessed with the same thought of a divine form, you might feel as if the divine is coming and talking to you. It's all you yourself is doing. You are the devotee and you are the divine, you are the other figure in dualities, the Dvaita. So you come and you talk to yourself, all this keep happening, but you are thinking, some divine personal God is coming and talking to me. That's what happens. And if you do tapas, when the mind becomes 100% concentrated, then the manifestation happens. Here I use the manifestation word because that will be as physical as this world in front of you or your own physical body. Then finally that guides, that is from within you only. That guides you to give up everything and merge into the self. If it is there. If this imagination is not there, you can straight away the mind can stop and merge into the self. So that's why like different religious teachers may have different teachings, different terminology. So that may generate different imaginations. A form also is an imagination. Formlessness also is an imagination. You have to rise above this duality. That's when you become silent, Buddha. So that is how matter has in different stages, but the reality is not in different stages. Simply if you give up the imagination, there you are.
Thank you so much, Babaji. You cleared up a lot of points there.
Your last statement is my question, was about manifestation and reality. Could you, if I repeat what I heard you say, as I was writing it down, that reality is in different stages, but really they're matter. Actually, you said matter.
Matter are in different stages. Reality is one. Reality is not in different stages.
Okay. So in every now, if we are manifesting either emotional or physical or spiritual, is there a future now in which in this now we are able to realize?
You see, if you go on into such manifesting or anything, it is through the technology called imagination, creativity. You might visualize like that, and you may see the same things in future as a destiny for yourself. However, this is not reality. Reality is beyond these manifestations. Is that what you wanted to know?
the struggle, I don't want to know anything. I do desire peace.
So you can be peaceful only when you give up all imaginations. That is the truth of technology. Because as long as you are into imagination or any manifestation, a complete peace is not guaranteed. Because that consciousness which has become mind always drops into dualities, good and bad, right and wrong, happiness and unhappiness. So thus a peace cannot be guaranteed. But if the mind becomes quiet once for all, then the peace is guaranteed, if the peace is what you want. We will pray for you. May you be blessed.
Thank you.
Pranam Baba. So my mind lately has been in a constant conflict over two separate philosophies, struggling whether to accept this reality as illusion as you teach, or whether I'm thinking more along the lines of Kashmir Shaivism, where, reality is two inseparable elements of Shiva and Shakti. Because where I'm struggling is with how is the completely inactive, static Brahman able to produce any manifestations at all, even that of the mind? Why is the Kriya, why is the activity not needed? Why is Shakti not needed for the Brahman to even produce imaginations?
Shakti is there. Now first you try to understand Shiva and Shakti, why this concept was given. They are not personal gods standing anywhere, right? Shiva means your existence in total thoughtlessness state. Nishcheshtit is the word used in Sanskrit, which does not do any chesta, appears to be inert but fully conscious of its existence. Like your own mind, the first clue, if you try to know what this mind is made up of, everybody knows the mind based on thoughts and visions only. Nobody would have bothered, or nobody has seen it in naked eyes what the mind itself is. This mind itself is made up of pure consciousness and energy. This pure consciousness and energy's ultimate truth is recognized as the supreme consciousness and supreme energy. That is what Shiva and Shakti, Adipara Shakti, the first invisible energetic force. This and the legends say, Puranas, that the divine Brahma, Vishnu, and the Sanaka, Sananda, the yogis prayed to this energy to manifest as a holy mother with that concept, because mother is the kindest of the creation concept, the most wonderful perhaps. We all love our mothers, right? So thus, that mother is the one who unconditionally forgives the creation, whatever wrong we did or not. So this is the truth. So this is going to be there. This is what, when you realize, you rise above all identities and merge into the self. So that is one recommended goal if you want a permanent peace. This is what it is. So other activities of this world and its activities, as long as you enjoy, you are happy with that, it's your choice. You can be in this world or you can be in any world by visualization. Your mind will continue to visualize. The more it will visualize, it will go on creating such things for itself. So it is a person's choice. Simply in spirituality, this is a recommended goal. As long as there are imaginations in your mind or the creations in this, like a world or a universe or a Milky Way, a permanent peace, one type of peace is not guaranteed. The world, entire universe is made up of dualities, and one is important because of the other. If there is no conflict, you won't understand the value of peace. You understand the value of peace only when you lose it in your mind. So that is why this is recommended. a constant craving of the mind is the basic reason for all unhappiness. If you can overcome this, you realize the real Shiva and Shakti as the oneness that is experiencing. So all philosophies teach the same truth. Simply one needs to understand the end result, what is recommended. Shiva and Shakti, they both are the same. That's all pervaded. Somebody else might call it as self. Somebody else might call it as something else. Nirvana and moksha. One might call it as Shiva and Shakti to explain. This is made up of consciousness and energy.
Okay, so the kriya is not needed. The activity, when it comes to the purest ultimate reality, there is no activity.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Baba.
Welcome.
Pranams, Babaji.
Yes.
When you chant the shloka, you say a word, vimalam, achalam. So what is the meaning of, can you explain us, Babaji?
Vimala means his mind is composed now. It is settled down into the self. A yogi is always composed and gambhirta, you understand? Smith. Achalam is unmoved. Unmoved because he has experienced the truth as it is. So even if the entire universe world stands aside and criticizes him, makes fun and says that is not the truth, he will not be unmoved. He won't get confused. He has seen the truth as it is. For simply that truth, you can use any word, any language to recognize, or you don't want to recognize. So truth will not lose its existence effect simply because one doesn't want to recognize or one wants to talk in some other format or some other terminologies. So that's why yogi is unmoved, it says. Just like you have met me physically, you will tell your friend ki there is a Babaji who is known as Shiva, Rudra, Balayogi, and that friend might make fun. Hey, don't say that. No Babaji exists at all. You are simply throwing away all, fenkoing. So you don't do this thing. You will be unmoved because you have met Babaji. So that is the first hand knowledge when you experience the truth, right?
I've got two questions about time. So the first one is, you said about now and presence and consciousness of our own I, if you like, in the now. So is time, as we experience it, as I look out my window and see the sun go across, that's not real, it's just a measure of impermanence?
Yeah, imagination, some clue, like in the night when you sleep, if you get a sound sleep, say you sleep for 8 hours, that 8 hours might simply pass by, appear like 2 seconds. Quickly you are up and you will be wondering, so quickly time has passed by, I wish I could have slept for some more time. But if you don't get to sleep the whole night, its time passing by appears to be ages. Every moment you are looking at the clock, oh, still it's not morning, I'm unable to sleep. So thus the time appears to be as little as just nothing, and it can appear as long as it goes on. So that is how it happens. This world also, the time is recognized and appearance happens and disappearance happens. In between is the time. The time depends on your imagination, what you want to imagine. That's what we were trying to tell. Yeah. You said you have another question?
Yeah, the other part was really about time and reincarnation, as I've heard you talk about it over the years. So if somebody dies today, does reincarnation happen within time? You know, does somebody get reborn in 2 months, in 6 years? Or is time in terms of reincarnation got a different quality?
That time doesn't happen according to your calculation, because you are used to the dimension of this universe and this world. You calculate accordingly only. That's what even the scriptures also gives an example. This you will understand only when you experience in deeper samadhi state. However, just for sake of understanding, in Yoga Vasistha, this story comes. There is a king and his wife is a devotee of goddess Saraswati. the king goes to the war zone, into the battlefield. In the battle he gets killed, his body is brought. A wife is crying for 8 days, 7, 8 days. She is unable to remember even Goddess Saraswati or anything. She is so much miserable. On the 8th day she remembers Goddess Saraswati who appears, and she wants her husband to be back into life. Then she smiles and tells all the philosophy, so I will show you your husband, how you want him back. You see whether he remembers you or not. In a subtle body, she takes a long distance and shows into the next kingdom where her husband is already more than 40-year-old and he has his own queens and doesn't remember anything of his previous life. Just like, how much do you remember of your previous life, if at all it was there? Did you had one wife or 10 wives or whatever, children and families? In one life itself to manage the emotions is such a difficult thing for a person. If you remember your 50 lives, you will go mad. So, the sages have told, Ashtavakra, it is the divine's grace and a boon that you have forgotten your past. You don't remember your past lives. That is not needed. Simply you have to see what you are now. So that's how the time limit, we calculate only according to our calculations. 13 days, 100 days, whatever. Whoever has told, we try to believe that one. But in my experience, if the consciousness gets dropped from this body, it departs. It gives up this body. Instantly it assumes next incarnation, next body. Because the consciousness, as long as it is mind, it is visualizing, holding thoughts, it cannot remain without a physical body. Whatever it is, depending on the intensity of thoughts, either violent or non-violent, either it belittles itself or it can elevate itself into a better. So you see the world, observe. If a person is born, my Guru used to tell, you might be able to choose your wife or your husband, but your parents are already there when you are born. When will you choose? You are bringing from previous lives these karmas. So whatever you have visualized. A person, the parents, if they are of good karmic people, if they are pious, if they can give you proper sanskaras, acquired habits, teach you the proper things, truths about things, and when you go to school and when you mingle with people in the society, all these things matters. So this all the destiny carries you. So that's how things happen about time and space and matters.
Pranam Babaji, I'll go quick about this one. You described that there is a stage where mind goes into mental projections about like communicating with divine. My question is that if divine is pure consciousness, and in my understanding, it feels that only a communication could happen via our consciousness with divinity. So how do you sense that of saying that our communication with divine could be the part of imagination and not reality?
Actually, such a communication happens and when the individual's consciousness is not a consciousness purely, it is a mind. When it is a mind, that mind imagines about that divinity or ultimate truth in a personal God form. So then that form he communicates in his own imagination. Though he is communicating with the ultimate truth. Because he has imagined in the mind in that form, so the divine's grace appears in that form only. Through that form only, the teachings will come. If he wants to go for the ultimate truth, what the ultimate truth and self-realization, that final teachings will come and that divine figure will help that mind to become purified and merge with the self. That's what will happen.